that, any difficulty following the assignment?
No,
I
no, I think it was just we had certain different options, and I think we just kind of had to translate because some of the options had changed. I think Asad had mentioned um, that sometimes it's like a software update that hasn't rolled out to different orgs or something.
Yeah, so for me, is it safe to assume that everybody was able to complete the assignment without any difficulty? Or is there anyone still pending to complete the assignment?
Yeah, after it wasn't working, like after I didn't understand it the first time, then I left it. But I will complete it like right now. Sorry, I did 2 of them, but I didn't complete all 4.
I was able to complete the assignment after the explanation.
You were or you weren't?
I was able to complete the assignment.
Yeah. Sure. Okay, that's good. All right. Just I'll give you a small overview of the changes in the UI which you have observed. Let me start sharing my screen. So everyone can see the screen, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So in the new UI, which you might have seen, this part where it says password in the other one, and here it says activation. So this is the only change which you will observe for now. And if you see that we had an option of set by user as well as set by admin, but here we have an option of activate now and later. So activate later is like creating a user with the information which is required on this form, but not setting any password, not even sending any activation link to the user to set a password. So I explained you a status called staged yesterday, where if we create a user without any password, and if we don't even let the user to set a password, user would be in a staged state. That means there are information about the user, the account exists, but the account is not active yet, and there is no information sent to the user to activate the account. So that's the status which you will get when we create a user with activate later. With activate now, it works in both the mode of set by user and set by admin. If I do not select this checkbox, I will set the password. Then it is similar to set by user in the previous UI. So here this two combination is equivalent to activate now. So this will send an activation email to the user on the email address which we provide here, and user need to click on that link and set a password. If I select this box, I will set the password. Then this becomes equivalent to set by admin, and I have an option of setting a password. Again, if I check this box, then it becomes a temporary one-time password. If I uncheck this box, then it becomes a password for the regular use for this user, which is similar to checking this box. So this is the only difference which you might have seen so far. So if there is still anyone who has confusion, you can ask me again, and I can explain, and we can see different statuses. Otherwise, we can go to the new topic. Seems like everybody has got it. So I'll start another topic or discussion today. So following up, so we all know how to create a user. and how to create a user with different statuses. So if I want to create a user in stage status, then I will just not set the password and not even send an activation email to the user. If I want to create a user with pending user action, then I will not set the password. I will send an activation email to the user and the user need to send the password. If I need to create a user with a one-time password, then I must set a password and check the box to expire the password. If I want to create an active user, then I should set the password and not check the box to make it a one-time password. So these are the different statuses. Apart from these statuses, we have few other here. If you look in this drop down, you'll see that there is a logged out status. There is a suspended, deactivated, and the password reset. These are the different statuses which you see. So logged out is pretty simple to understand. When a user tries to authenticate to Okta using the right username but incorrect password multiple times, we can set the time limit how many times they can try. But let's say there is a threshold of 3 or 5 and they try to authenticate to Okta more than 5 times with incorrect password, their account gets locked. So the user would have a status of locked out. In that case, now let's say 6 time user remembers the correct password and tries to log in, user will still get an error because the account is already locked out. Deactivated is again when a user gets offboarded from an organization or the account is no longer needed, then we deactivate the account. It is equivalent to termination or offboarding. Suspended is similar to deactivation, but the difference between deactivation and suspension is for a shorter time period, while deactivation is like a long-term separation or a permanent separation from the organization. So let's say you might not be there in this organization for 4 months or 6 months. In that case, there is a hope that you are going to come back after 4 months or 6 months and resume your work. So I do not need to delete your information or deactivate your account. I can just suspend your account so that nobody can actively log into your account, even if they have the right credential, and we can secure your account. Deactivation is, let's say you got an offer and you want to move from this company to another company and you no longer wish to return, or there is like no agreement that you would be returning back to the organization, then that leads to termination or deactivation of the account. So this is the only difference from the status wise. There is one other technical difference, which is when we deactivate the account, we remove all the apps which user had access to. But in case of suspension, we keep the app which user had access to. So we do not remove the user from those individual applications, because when user returns back to the organization and carries on the same job functionality, user will need those applications to continue the job. So that's why we do not remove any applications, or the applications are not removed automatically. But in case of deactivations, you will see that all the applications which user had access to is removed automatically. Password reset is when I reset the password for a user, either by sending a link or by generating a temporary password from Okta admin dashboard. Then user user enters into a password reset state. That means either user has a one-time password or a link to set a new password. So these are the different statuses. And as I said yesterday, based on all of these statuses, the only status which let the user log in is active. So if user is active, they should be able to log in. Let's say you are working as an Okta administrator and you receive an incident from some users stating that they cannot log in. So the first thing which you would like to check is the status and make sure the user is active. If you see the status and if user is not active, then you have an idea why user is seeing that error and how you can resolve that error. Any questions so far?
No, pretty clear so far.
All right. So yesterday, while creating the users, we were supplying first name, last name, username, primary email, these 4 attributes. But if we go to the user profile, the Bob Johnson user, which we created yesterday, we'll see that there are more than these 4 attributes. There are a list of attributes. But why are we not seeing these attributes while creating the user? We only see 4 or 5 or lesser than what we see in the full profile. The reason being is these 4 are the only required attributes or the mandatory attributes which all user must have. You will not be able to create a user in Okta without these 4 attributes. Other attributes are optional. A user may not have those values, but these are the 4 required attributes for Okta. So we cannot have a user without first name or last name. Similarly, we cannot have a user without a username or email address. We can have a user without a group, that's fine. We can have a user without password, without title, street address, but we should have these 4 attributes filled in for each and every user. If I try to create a user, let's say, without a first name, and I say his name is Williams, his first name is Sam, so sam.williams@tlc.com. And if I click on save, I should expect an error from Okta that this field cannot be left blank because this is one of the required field. And as soon as I fill in this value, that error goes away. And now if I hit on save, this user gets created. Similarly, if I remove the last name and click on save, the error will shift to the last name field. And I need to have all of these 4 attributes in order to create this user. So there is a quick quiz. The user which I created right now, what will be the status of that user? Anyone or everyone can answer this question. No one? I just created a user, Sam Williams. So what should be the status of that user?
He would be inactive. He would be pending user action.
Pending user action. And why is that?
Because
If you want to
he was
see, go ahead.
because he wasn't assigned a password by us, so he needs to set up a password.
Okay. And when will a user get a chance to set up a password of his own?
Oh, if they receive an activation email or an email to log into an account.
Correct. Correct. So the user would be in pending user action state if they receive an activation email from us, from Okta. And the only way they can receive this activation email from Okta if we check this box. So if we do not check this box, user will not receive the activation email. So in the case when I created this user, I did not had this box checked. So will the user still receive an activation email? No.
It would be staged.
So correct. So user would be in staged state.
I see. Okay.
I can refresh the page and we can find out. So user is in staged state. Now if I click on activate, then user gets an activation email and the status changes to
and pending user action.
Correct. So it changes to pending user action. So if I now refresh this page, it should go into pending user action. Let's say if I go into this user profile, let's say user has not received this activation email for some reason. There had been some technical challenges with the email mailbox. And if I click on set password and activate, and if I click on set password and activate again, I get this temporary password. So what will be the user state now?
Pending user action?
Pending user action, no, because
It would
pending
be,
user action, sorry.
it would be activated, right? I'm sorry if I cut you off.
But if the
No,
user hasn't clicked it
unfortunately.
yet, why would it be activate? Sorry.
Wouldn't
No,
it
go
be
ahead. Yeah.
password reset or something like that? Or password
Correct.
expired?
Password expired is actually the right status. So the reason it will not be in pending user action is because this is a temporary password which we are generating in the admin console. We are not sending a link to the user to generate a password. So there is no action pending from the user. Secondly, the user will not be in active state because this is a one-time password. And we have seen previously also, whenever there is a one-time password, user gets into a password expired state. Or it says password expired, user is in one-time password mode. So that is a status which this user will get. So if I close this and if I refresh, you will see that user will turn into password expired state. Yeah. Okay. Now, if I want to deactivate this user, then I can click on more action and I can click on deactivate. If I want to suspend the user, I can click on suspend. It's a one-click action, so it just deactivates the user. It's very easy to understand. As I told you, once the user gets deactivated, user will lose access to all of the applications they had before. If I want to activate a deactivated user, I can click on this activate option here, and this will send an activation email to the user. It says an activation email will be sent to this person. So an activation email will be sent to the user, and the user will be in status.
Activate, right? Active
No,
status.
no. We are sending an activation email to the user.
Pending
So there
user.
is an
Oh,
action.
pending. Yeah.
Correct. So there is an action to be performed by the user, and user will be in pending user action. If I suspend the user, then user will get into suspended state. Similarly, if I activate the user will again go to the pending user action status. If I need to delete this user, I do not have this option here. We cannot directly delete a user. We always need to deactivate the user before deleting it. So I will need to deactivate this user. Once the user is deactivated, I have the delete button here, and clicking on delete deletes the account from my Okta instance.
I had a question.
Mhm.
When they lose the applications, did they lose their memberships to groups?
No. So the membership to group will be retained, but you will not be able to further add the user to any new group, but all the existing membership will be retained, but they will lose access to the application just.
Okay.
Okay. So all the action which we have seen so far is a single user action, wherein like we were creating one user at a time. We were able to modify the profile of single user at a time. We also saw how we can activate, deactivate, change the status, play around with the status, and what those different status are from a single user perspective. Now we will be moving towards multiple users or bulk user at a time, because it may be a scenario then we need to create 10 users or 100 users at once. So we can definitely go ahead to the directory people 100 times and click on add person, provide the information, and click on save. That creates a user. Again, click on add person and fill in this information, and we can go into a loop. But I don't think anybody here would prefer that method. It's very tiresome. So what we can do is we can use some bulk activity, and we can do all these things at once. Um, so the first thing which we will see is how we can create users at bulk, for which there is action or method in Okta. So the one of such method is to go to directory people and click on more actions and click on import user from CSV. I believe everybody here knows what a CSV is.
I understand that it's a file type, but I couldn't tell you what CSV stands for.
Okay. So yeah,
Separate.
you're correct. Correct. So it is a file type wherein the different values are separated by each other using a comma. So let's say if I open a notepad, right, and I say Sam, comma, let's say Bob, comma, Williams, then these are three different information. They are separated by comma, and this kind of file is called as CSV. So when a system like Okta or any other system which can understand CSV, they read it as three different users, right? Not a single user. So mostly we do not need to work like this. Microsoft Excel supports CSV. So you would be able to just use Excel feature. For you, it will be rows and column, but when you save that file, Excel will convert into a comma separated values, and Okta can understand those values. So in order to do a bulk activity, as you can see, we can go up to 10,000 users at once. We have to download a template from Okta which specifies what information you can fill in about this user and in which specific column. So once you download this template, you can open this template in Microsoft Excel. So this is the file. It's a blank file with only the headers filled in each column. Now each row here will represent, this entire row 2 will represent one user. Again, entire row 3 will represent one user, and so on. So if you need to create, let's say, one user called Sam Williams, then you will need to provide the details about Sam Williams in this entire row. These are the different attributes which we see in Okta profile for each user. So we can fill in these informations. Again, not all attributes are required, so we don't need to fill in all the information. We only need to fill in the 4 required or mandatory attributes, which are, what are they?
First name, last name, username, email.
Correct. First name, last name, username, and primary email address. So username is also called as login. We'll see how and where it is defined, but it is also called as login. So login and username are same. First name, last name, and email or the primary email are the required attributes which we need to fill in. We cannot create a user without these attributes. We can leave others blank or we can fill in for a specific user, that's fine. But these 4 are mandatory. So let's say my username will be sam.williams at tlc.com. Now, why am I giving the username in an email format?
Because the username has to be in an email format in for Okta.
Correct. Getting quite a good name, so I'll just use same last name. I can say sam.winters at tlc.com. I can So these are the 3 users we are going to create. We can create as many users, up to 10,000 users using a single file. And let's say I'll provide few other information randomly about these users. So let's say for city, for Sam, it can be, give me 3 cities name. Is this a city or a state?
A state.
Give me 3 cities.
New York, Chicago, Boston.
Yeah. And for title, this user is an IT admin. This user is a web developer. And this user is financial analyst. Now we have filled in the information which we want to fill in for the users. So for all the users, we have filled in the required attributes, which is username, first name, last name, email. Additionally, we have filled in title and city for all the users, state for only one user. And let's say I would also fill division for one of the user, department for another user, so on. So randomly I fill in the information. What I want to evaluate is, will it let me create these users with, because they don't have similar information. Few have division, few have department. These 2 users do not have division. So will it let create those users or not? So that's our goal to understand. Any question with this file?
No.
All right. So I'll save this file and close Excel, and I can select the file which is saved, and I can upload the file. So as soon as I click on upload CSV, it will do few actions. One is to check the file type is in the CSV format. Secondly, whether Okta is able to understand each row, not from the value perspective, but from the technical perspective that they are in the right format. So if they are in the right format, Okta will try to use those information in each row and create or update those users. So I click on upload CSV and it says CSV file parsed successfully. So Okta has identified that it is a CSV format and it is able to read all the rows successfully. So that means that is what it means, parsed successfully. Now, if I hit next, it will be able to use those information and create 3 users for me. Now, do I want to activate these users? If I want to activate these users, I can select this box. Otherwise, they will be in staged status. And this is an additional option if they are coming from a third-party identity provider, which we haven't discussed so far, then whether they have a password or not. So I'll just do not select this box for now and click on import users. So now Okta is trying to use those information and create the user. So it says 3 new users. That means there are 3 new users created. There were no users which were updated or changed, or there were no errors. And when I click on done, I see Sam William, Bob Williams, and what was the third user? Sam Winters, right?
Yes, Winters.
Sam Winters, and they are all in pending user action because
Because they need to make a password.
okay. And what selection of mine did give them this status?
Because we chose to activate them, therefore sending them an activation email, but we did not create a password.
Correct. So when we create a user through CSV, we cannot send a password for the user. So we can only send an activation email to the users and they get into a pending user action if we choose to send them an activation email. All right, let's go to the profile of these users and see if we have the information which we provided in the Excel. So we have the username, first name, last name, primary email address. We also have the title which we provided for this user. And did we provide division, city, state, division, department? We did not provide department for this user. So all the user information which we provided for these users are in here. If I also go and check any other user, which I created along with this user, I should see similar information whichever I provided in that Excel sheet to be here. This user also has a title, has a city, but no state because I did not provide that, and has neither department or division because it was not provided. Any question on creating bulk user using CSV?
No, not at the moment.
Okay. Let's say that I use the same CSV again and I keep the first 4 mandatory fields as it is. And let's say I change from an IT admin to a IT manager. And again, user has changed from New York to a remote worker, right? And if I save this file and if I re-upload this file, should it work or no?
It should, and it will just update just that one user, right?
Okay, and what happens to the other 2 users in the Excel sheet?
Nothing.
Okay, and if they were also changed?
If they were changed, then their profile would get updated as well.
Okay, and how about if none of them were changed?
And it would cause an error because each user has to be unique, correct?
Each user has to be unique, that is correct, but there would be no error because in that case, Okta sees no difference in their account and hence Okta ignores those 3 rows. So it will be like 0 users created, 0 users updated, and so on.
I see.
And for now, there would be 1 user updated and no user created and no errors until we make one. Again, okay, so an activation email is already sent to this users. If I set this box again, will an activation email send to the user again?
No, because it's that option you just checked is for new users.
Correct. So this option is only for the new user, not for the existing users. And they are an existing users, so there will be no duplicate activation email. So it says 0 new users, 1 updated user, and 2 users unchanged and 0 errors. And the user which we made a change is Sam Williams, I believe. And if we go to the profile from ID admin, user should change to ID manager, which it has, and city is remote worker. So apart from creating users at once, multiple users at once, we can also perform other actions, like we can deactivate multiple users at once. We can reset password for multiple users at once. And in order to do so, earlier when we were deactivating the user or resetting the password, we needed to enter the user profile and then use these action button here. But for bulk actions, we will not get into an individual user's profile. We go to directory people and we use the action button here at the top. So if I click on more action and deactivate, then it gives me a list of users to select from. So if I want to select users which I want to deactivate, then I can check these boxes against those users, and only these users selected will get deactivated. If I want this action to be performed on all the users, which necessarily you will never do that in a real scenario, we can also do it and we can just click on deactivate, then everyone gets deactivated, including me as an administrator, which I will not do it. So I'll just deactivate few accounts, right? Let's say I want to deactivate Maureen Johnson. I want to deactivate pending user, and I want to deactivate Sam Winters. Then I select these boxes against those users and I click on deactivate selected users, and it will deactivate 3 users for me. So all these 3 users are now deactivated. If I only want to see those users which are deactivated, I can click on status and I can scroll down and click on deactivated, and it only shows the deactivated users. We deactivated 3 users now, but there were other users in the deactivated states from previous, so it's a total of 6 users. If I want to see how many users are in pending user action, I can just select pending user action here, and I can see there are 3 users in pending user action. If I want to see users in active state, then I select active and it shows there are 6 users in the active status. One quick question is, this user is not in active status, right? It's in password expired, but it still is counted in the active status. Any reason why?
Does that mean that the user was previously activated, but the password needs to be updated?
It could be because of a policy you guys have. So just because their password expired doesn't mean, like, if you have a 90-day policy, the password expires in 90 days, doesn't mean that the user's account should be activated when the password expires, right?
Something of this kind, but like it's not through the policy. So there is a thin line between password reset and password expired. So when I say password reset, that necessarily means that currently there is no password on the account, or whatever password it was, it has been revoked, and somewhere we are asking user to set a password. So usually when user forgets the password, we do a reset password. In that case, we remove the current password from the account and we let the user set a new fresh password by sending them a reset link or something. In password expire, there is still a password on the account and it is a temporary one-time use password. But there is a password on the account. Using the temporary password, user can still log in to Okta, and hence Okta consider this as a active user instead of considering this as a password reset. So that is why if you go into the status, you will not see a password expired status here. You will only see a password reset, which is different from password expired. And currently there are no users in the password reset state.
Quick question. So in the password expired status, they can use that one-time password to still sign in, and then would they then, after signing in, go into a password reset state?
No. So once they sign in using the temporary password, Okta will force them to change the password at the time of login itself. So if they set the password, they will enter into an active state. They do not set the password, let's say they close the window then and there, then that temporary password is still active because they did not set a new password on the file. So they can still use a temporary password the next time they log on. But until they set a password, they cannot access any dashboard or any application. They will always be prompted to set a password to move ahead from the authentication page.
I see. Okay, so the password stays even if they just close the window or something.
Correct, yeah. And if they set the password, they move into a complete active state like this. Similarly, we can also reset password or multi-factor. We can click on this and we can select the user for whom we want to reset password. Currently, you see no user because I have a filter to only show locked out user or expired user, but I can select all and it shows me all the users who are, should show all the users. Why it is only showing deactivated users? Let's see for my account. If I search for my account, will it not show me my account? So this is something new. I'm only able to see the users who are not active. Not sure why, but I'll find out. Earlier, it should show all the accounts regardless of their current status, and I should be able to reset password for all the user account. I think there has something which changed in the UI. I'll let you know. You can also reset multi-factor if and when users are enrolled into those multi-factors. Again, the same way by selecting those users and clicking on reset multi-factor. So let's say I want to reset multi-factor for this user. I click on reset multi-factor and it will reset all the factors enrolled by these users. But there can be that this user had multiple multi-factors. So once we get into the multi-factors concept, we will see that you can have multiple factors enrolled. You can have a Google authenticator, you can have security questions, you can have Microsoft authenticator and so on enrolled. These three authenticators, and you can select which one to use at the time of authentication yourself, whichever is convenient to you or me as an administrator. I can set which one has to be used as per the policy, and one of those will be prompted to you to utilize. So in case you want to only reset a specific factor, then we cannot do that action in bulk. Then we have to go to that individual user profile. Let's say, let me find an active user and I will go to more action, reset factor, and it will list all the factors which user is enrolled into. And then I can just check the box against the factor I want to reset and click on reset here. Currently, this user is not enrolled into any factors, and that's why you see no factors are currently set up for this user as a message.
So Okta doesn't give you the option to like send a code to your email.
Send a code to your email.
Yeah,
Yes, it
yeah.
does.
Okay.
So email is also one of the factor, and by default, email is a factor which is always enrolled for all the users, and you cannot de-enroll a user from an email factor. So that is why even if somebody is, as I said, that's a factor which is always enrolled. So that means that factor is also enrolled for Bob. But if you go to more action and reset factor, you will never be able to see email here in the list because that is a factor which you cannot de-enroll yourself.
Okay. One more question. Does it let you choose when you have like multiple multi-factor resources? Does it let you choose like a primary and a secondary? Say like I'm traveling, I don't want it to come to my phone. I want it to go to my email.
So in Okta, there is no concept of primary versus secondary multi-factor. Okta will definitely let you choose which one you want to use. It gives you an option to use factors, and you can then have a list of factor and you can select one. But yes, there is no concept of primary and secondary factors, so you will always need to select yourself. Any other questions from anyone?
None here.
Okay. All right, so I think we now know the overview about users. We have less time left, but let's start the discussion about groups. So can anyone explain what they understand by groups?
Um, the groups feature allows you to group like users together and then give them, certain access or permission, similar to like AD. So
Okay.
if I have like a membership in AD, say we have one for SharePoint for full-time employees, and then we can have a second one for, SharePoint access for contractors or external partners or external users. So
Okay.
it gives you the ability to group users together and then grant them certain access or features.
Correct. Yeah, so you're correct. And groups helps us organize users together of similar type. Now, this similar type does not mean a user type. It can be of any specific attribute. Let's say I want users of similar work profiles or similar job responsibilities to be grouped together. I can create a group and I can assign or put all the users in a single group called, let's say, IT administrator. So that will help me to understand, looking at one place, how many IT administrators I have. Even let's say I want all IT administrators to have access to few common application, that group will help me assign applications to all the IT administrators at once. So let's say I needed to assign 10 applications and there are 100 IT administrators. I don't need to repeat that action 10 into 100 times. I can just assign those 10 applications to a single group called IT administrator, and all the users who are in that group will get access to those 10 applications. And you gave an example of Active Directory and others about SharePoint. Definitely, those are the use cases of groups, which we will cover later when we do a directory integration, but it may be difficult for others to understand. So we'll stick to the common examples, which we will see now in Okta as Okta directory. So for Okta, mostly we use groups for application assignment and policies. We have very less use cases of groups in Okta. So it will be mostly restricted to assigning users to a specific policy using groups or assigning users to different applications using groups. So these are the limited actions we can use or limited use cases of groups in Okta. So in order to create a group, I will go to the groups section in directory. And here you see there are already few groups created for me. You will see that your tenant instance has only one group called everyone, unless you have created a group yourself. So this is a default group which is there in each and every Okta instance created by default. You do not create this group, and any user you create in Okta or import from any of the sources, like I did the import from a CSV file, they are all in this group. We cannot manually remove a user from this group or add a user to this group. Anyone who gets created in Okta is by default present in this group. So if you see, I had 17 users in directory people, and there are 17 members to that everyone group. Now, other groups which you can see here is something which I have created, and based on my business requirement, I have assigned the users to those groups. So in order to create a group, I can click on add group here, and I need to provide name and description for this group. So name is the group name through which you will identify this group. Let's say I want a group for all IT administrators. So I can say IT admins. So this will help me understand what this group is. And if I want to even explain it further, then I can use a description field and I can explain what this group contains. So I can say that group for all IT admins in the org. So this explains further what this group is about. So looking at this group, I can have some idea. It's just not that any random name or something. So always try to keep your group name something meaningful so that looking at that group, you not just you, let's say that if you are no longer associated with the organization and there is a new member to the team, even they looking at the group might be able to understand what this group is all about. So IT admins group is here. Currently it has 0 members. So if I go to this group, I can see in people there are no members. I can assign a member individually by clicking on assign people, and then it lets me add people here. When you add a user to a group, we cannot add a deactivated user to a group. If the user was already present in the group and then gets deactivated, then user stays in that group, but we cannot ourselves add a deactivated user into a group. So that's why you will never see a deactivated status here, even if the user is present in the deactivated status. And if you check with their email address, you will not find the user while assigning them to a group. So let's say I want to assign few users to this group. I click on plus beside those users and they are getting assigned. Once done, I just click on this button and those 3 users gets assigned to this group. Now if I go to this user profile, let's say if I go to Sam Johnson, and if I go to the group tab here, I can see this user being part of 2 different groups. One, everyone, which is created by default, and all users in Okta will be part of this group. Secondly, IT admins, which I created and assigned the group to the user. Any question?
So when all the users are assigned to a group, can those users in their own dashboard or whichever, like in their own accounts, they can see that they're part of that group as well?
No.
No, so it's
So
just in
they
your
will
own.
not see the group membership, yes.
Okay.
All right. So if I want to add any members further, I can again click on assign people on this group, and I can just select the users who are currently not member of the group and click on done. And this will add the user to the group. So there were 3 users earlier. Now this group has 4 users. I can also assign applications to this group by going to the application tab So in the people tab, I can assign members. In the applications tab, I can assign application to this group. I can click on assign application and I can add one of the available application from my Okta instance and click on done. Now, since this application is assigned to this group IT admins, and this group contains 4 members, this application directly got assigned to these 4 members. So that's the one of the use case of having group. We use group for application assignment or to control who gets access to which application. So let's say for Facebook, they have to be IT admins. In that case, I assign this application to the group IT admins. And if any user need access to Facebook, they need to be a member of this group. So let's say there is another new user onboarded to your organization and they need access to Facebook. You simply go to the people tab and click on assign people. You look for that user and click on the plus and click on done. User gets added to this group, get listed here, and user gets access to all the application which you see here. So if you want to just cross verify, there are 2 ways we can do that. One, we can go to this user account and we can see in the applications tab, this user has this application. The second way is I can go to this application itself and I can go to the assignments tab and I should be able to see that user. And it says that this user is assigned through a group. And if I want to know against which group, not always, but sometimes if you click on this pencil icon, you would be able to see the name of the group. Currently, you do not see the name of the group. If there are any attributes which are being managed by this group, then you will also see the name of the groups. Any question? I know like this last group part was a quick rush, but if there are any question, I'll try to explain again. If not, then I'll give you the assignment.
So far, so good.
All right. So we have an assignment for the group. So for the people who has completed this assignment, it's well and good. For the others who has not completed this, please complete this. And if you have any question, you can let me know. I can revisit the topic regarding our next assignment, which is this one. Hold on. Okay, so I think we are missing one slide. Okay, so I'll send an email to all of you with the assignment wherein you will need to create 2 different groups. One is web developer and one is IT administrators. And you need to add 3 members each group as I showed you today. Sounds good?
Sounds good.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Sounds great.
Right, then if nobody has a question, then for me, I'll just end the session here today and we'll again connect tomorrow. Muhammad or Asad, if you want to take over the session,